Yo, what's up? I'm Elder and welcome back to my channel where I like to talk about all things spooky, scary, and have a little bit of fun. Today on the channel, we're going to be talking about Stephen King, Osgood Perkins, and James Wan's The Monkey. This Cursed Object movie feels kind of like an artistic take on a Final Destination type of approach. The movie is really funny, and the kills are absolutely spectacular as well. This movie is gruesome, and kind of feels like a splatter flick in a way. The kills are bombastic and over the top, and that almost adds to the humor of it all. The movie uses some really good cameos and some really clever editing to make a lot of jokes hit out of normally dark subjects here. But The Monkey also finds a balance and a way to get its themes across. The whole story piggybacks on the idea of generational traumas being passed down through families. In this case, specifically from father to son. When it comes to Stephen King movies, we have ones like It and Cujo that lie very close to the source material. But The Monkey takes more of the route of, say, The Shining. These guys use the base idea of Stephen King, but really make it their own and go wild with it. And I think that the story that we were given in the cauldron of these three guys spitting out ideas together really came out well. But that's all I can really say without getting into spoilers, so let's just jump into it. The Monkey is a new American horror comedy film based on the 1980s short story by Stephen King. The film adaptation is written and directed by Osgood Perkins. It stars Theo James, Tatiana Maslany, Elijah Wood, Christian Conroy, Colin O'Brien, Rohan Campbell, and Sarah Levy. The film begins in an old antique store as a frantic pilot comes in and tries to sell a man an a monkey toy. The shop owner questions why the man is soaked in blood and tells him he has no interest in buying a broken child's toy. The thing's arm doesn't even come down. The pilot explains that you do not want the monkey's arm to go down. When it does, terrible things will happen. At that moment, the monkey activates and begins banging a little song on his drum. The pilot braces in fear, but the shop owner seems largely unamused with all this. When the toy stops though, a series of unfortunate events kicks off as a mouse chews through a rope, subsequently activating a large diving harpoon that launches across the room and through the shopkeep's stomach. After a moment passes to let everything sink in, the harpoon retracts itself, pulling out the store owner's guts. The pilot witnesses this atrocity and quickly finds a flamethrower in the store. He takes the monkey out back and melts that sucker down. A narration kicks in, explaining that sometimes fathers can pass evil and wicked things down their family tree, and this was going to be a story of just that. This opening scene really sets the tone for the movie. It is bombastic and insane to say the least. The way that their father attempts to torch the monkey doll reminds me out of something from a Quentin Tarantino movie. It's crazy. We fast forward a few years and are introduced to a pair of young twin boys, Hal and Bill Shelburne. These two give off some serious Zack and Cody vibes, as our main character Hal is the nervous and bullied nerdier one, while Bill is all tough and cool. He wears Guy Fieri Flame t-shirts and is frequently really harsh to his brother. The boys are being raised by their cold yet very loving mother, Lois, who tells the boys that their father was a deadbeat pilot who ran off on her with a bunch of flight attendant stewardesses, leaving her behind with the two boys to raise all on her own, in a closet full of gift shop knickknacks he'd left behind. Among these seemingly random things happens to be an old grinder monkey. The boys find it and remove it from a box that just says "like life" on the lid. Assuming the toy might be too old to work, they try cranking the key up to start it. The monkey twirls its little drumstick around in its hand, but strangely doesn't hit the drum. So the boys disregard this as just some souvenir garbage. The next day, the two boys are picked up by their babysitter to go grab some sick hibachi, but Hal notices that the weird monkey toy had somehow made it into the car with them. Weird, but not as weird as Bill sitting up front and trying to hit on his babysitter. The group arrive and sit down for what they expect to be a nice little meal. The chef gets all fired up and performs all the usual tricks, getting oohs and ahs from the patrons. But out in the car, the mysterious monkey toy begins playing its little song. The babysitter inside is completely mesmerized by the show and doesn't even notice when the monkey stops, and the chef overreaches a bit too far on his flourish move, effectively decapitating the babysitter in front of the boys. The two are taken to the sitter's funeral by their mother in a hilarious scene where the eulogy is given by some super stupid stoned out teenager. After the ceremony, their mother tells them not to be afraid because death is just another part of life. Everyone has their time and there's no use in being upset about that. Straight to the point, I will admit, but she softens the experience for the boys by taking them out for a night of ice cream and dancing. Hal's narration even informs us that this would be the very last time he would ever feel true happiness. The boys both struggle with what they saw, Bill being the most affected, exclaiming that he felt he was supposed to one day marry his babysitter. This causes him to start acting out even more than is usual, and as expected, he directs all of this newfound anger out on his poor brother. The monkey begins resurfacing in the boy's room. Bill accuses Hal of being the one that keeps putting it in there, but he denies wanting anything to do with this toy. We get a very uncomfortable scene where Bill bullies Hal and tells him that he can keep the monkey toy, but only if he says out loud that he wants to marry the monkey. He wants to become Mrs. Monkey, and he wants to, eat the monkey's bananas. After this incident, things only get worse, as a group of girls at school are put up by his brother to start mercilessly teasing Hal. They go to lengths of stealing his pants, causing him to have to walk around school in his undies all day, and pulling up on him with a metric ton of bananas, violently smashing them all over him. This sends Hal over the edge. He is done with Bill. He races home and barges past his mother to find the monkey. As expected, it was right there in his room like it was waiting for him. Hal screams at the toy, telling it that he knows something's up with it. The way it teleports around and how strange his sitter's death happened were just not normal. Seemingly understanding the power in his hands, Hal cranks the toy up, begging it to end his brother's life. The monkey fires up and begins banging on its drum, and when it stops, Bill enters the home. Everything seems normal until he calls out to his mother and she doesn't greet him back like usual. Eventually, finding her in the kitchen, she turns to him and on the spot has the most frightening aneurysm I've ever seen in a movie. Blood spurts from her ear like a faucet and she collapses, slamming her head on the counter as she goes down in front of her son. Another funeral is held and we get a heartbreaking scene as Bill tries to wake up his mother's corpse mid-eulogy. That night, Hal wrestles with the guilt of knowing that he had caused his own mother's demise. He takes the monkey down into the basement, chops it to bits with a cleaver, hoping to put this evil to an end. He chops and chops, with each piece seemingly bleeding as it comes apart. The two boys are here adopted by their aunt and uncle, who admit to them they may not be the best suited for the job, but that they would be doing their best for the children. The four relocate to a new home in Costco, Maine, where, against all odds, the monkey resurfaces again. The boys determine that the evil monkey must have killed their mother, with Hal allowing Bill to believe that she must have cranked the key herself. Bill tests this theory by turning the key again, and this time it causes their uncle to be killed by some 60+ horses in a wild stampede while asleep in a sleeping bag. This kill is straight up a nasty one. The boys attempt again to dispose of the monkey by dropping it into a dry well in hopes that no one will ever find it and unleash its evil ever again. Now, flash forward to present day and we catch up with Aunt Ida as she's awoken in the middle of the night by a mysterious sound coming from the inside of the house. A sound that we now know comes from the monkey. She searches the home high and low for the cause, eventually leading her to the basement where she slips through a weak stair, dropping her face first into a box of old fishing lures. She heads back upstairs to clean her wounds with isopropyl, when suddenly, she hears a new sound that troubles her, this time coming from her gas stove. She inspects the sound, but when she leans in to hear, the flame ignites and bursts her whole head into flames. Frantically, she runs from the house, getting her legs stuck in a flower vase, and after a few more steps of pure chaos, she runs headfirst into a for sale sign, ending this agonizing sequence. I can't say it enough, the kills in this film are outrageous. The way that they line up all these mousetrap dominoes falling over style kills is just so great. Some of them are more simple than others, and some of them are really nasty. So now, after the prologue and a cold open, we return to Hal, who's now a grown man. He even has a son named Petey, who he plans to go on a trip with to a theme park for his birthday. Not everything is business as usual though, because Hal here only sees his kid for 1 week a year. On the surface, this sounds insane, but Hal knows he's doing it to keep his boys safe in case the evil monkey were ever to return again. Hal arrives to his baby mama's massive lavish mansion to pick up Petey, but first has to have a little conversation with his ex and her new husband, who just so happens to be some kind of an expert on child mental health and marital relations. They explain to him that because of Hal's absence in Petey's life, they wish to remove him from it completely, believing that Petey's stepfather should adopt him to save him the heartbreak that Hal puts him through. Hal hates this idea, but understands it's probably for the better. Nonetheless, he picks up his son and attempts to have the best week that he can with him. The two set up for the night at a motel where Hal receives a surprise phone call from his brother. Bill informs us that the monkey has returned and taken the life of their dear Aunt Ida. He stresses that something must be done and the monkey has to be found and vanquished. He's opting out of any hands-on roles though, as he insists that Hal has to handle this one himself. Hal isn't all too keen on this, and he hasn't even heard from Bill in the last last 11 years, wondering where he's really been all this time. But he does eventually agree to go back to his aunt's house to check things out, at least hoping to protect his son from their generational curse. Though still feeling skeptical of the monkey's return, Hal is quickly convinced when a Final Destination-style sequence of events causes an AC unit to electrify some water that trails to a pool and fills it with dangerously high levels of voltage. Hal notices this, but does so just too late as he tries to warn a diver who hops in and immediately pops like a balloon. Hal and Petey head back to the house where they're beat to it by an estate sale. We see a young skate punk that hilariously looks just like Joey Ramone as he takes interest in the cursed monkey that had been left out for purchase. He picks it up and takes it home, explaining to his mother that for some odd reason it fondly reminds him of his dad that he deeply resents. He doesn't intend on keeping it, however. The rando elusive man down the street who never leaves his home wishes to buy the weird thing off of him. Hal and Petey finally make it to Aunt Ida's, but as we know, the toy is nowhere to be found. Hal is escorted throughout the home by a realtor who tells us that while his aunt's death was very strange, it was only one of many odd deaths that have been taking place all across town recently. One after another, sometimes 5 in a day, people were getting erased in terrible accidents. As she's explaining this, she opens up a broom closet, and as if on cue, a shotgun falls from its stand and straight up explodes the realtor. Hal is tripping out now, knowing how close death is to his door. He receives another call from his brother, to whom he informs that the monkey isn't there. But surprisingly, Bill states that this is just the next step in the plan and tells Hal to await his signal, hanging up prematurely. None of this weirdo nonsense is adding up for Hal, and he is tired of playing Bill's games, getting a hunch that Bill is staying somewhere in town. He grabs a phone book and looks desperately for his brother's name, at first finding nothing, but interestingly, he does see the number for one Mrs. Monkey in a callback to earlier in the film. He calls the number, and on the other end hears a disturbing voicemail, where Bill's very distinct voice lets us know that he's found his prized monkey. The award had been paid, and the search had been closed. At this moment, everything clicks, and Hal realizes his deeply disturbed brother must have acquired the monkey for some kind of twisted reasons, though he couldn't be sure of exactly why. We see now how Bill spent these past 11 years. That night when they moved to Maine, he gazed out of a window into the night and saw the reflection of the monkey staring back at him, seemingly telling him outright that Hal was the one who cranked the key to kill their mother. He traveled back to the dry well that they ditched the toy in, but the thing was gone. The only piece left behind had been the winder key, seemingly left there as a clue to Bill that it would one day be back. As Bill aged in life, he stayed obsessed with the monkey, seeing it everywhere, and forever awaiting the day it'd pop back up in his life, sometimes even opening and closing closets repeatedly, hoping that it would just appear there. At long last, when he heard of his aunt's demise, he knew that it must have returned. He dug out his old childhood funeral suit, comically tailoring it to somewhat fit his now adult body, and put out the ad for the monkey to be found. Joey Ramone lookalike Ricky returns to Bill's house, asking if he could buy the toy monkey back. He admits it may be strange, but he feels some kind of draw to it since it bears such a striking resemblance to his father for him. Bill tells the kid to get lost, and this seems to drive him into a rage, even looking around the house for a possible entry point to break in. He heads back to his house and digs through his dad's old police gear, grabbing a gun and heading out to find Hal and Petey, knowing that they're related to Bill, as he remembered spotting them from afar as they left Aunt Ida's earlier in the film. Oh man, we got our major plot twist. So Bill clearly did not take things as well as Hal did growing up. Not as well adjusted, I guess you could say. But he has spent the last 11 years just waiting for this monkey to pop back up and come into his hands. Him tailoring his little funeral suit from when he was a kid to fit him again is so funny because it absolutely does not fit him, and the dude just looks like an absolute lunatic. I love the little back and forth that he has with Ricky too. Elsewhere, Hal and Petey have found themselves at odds. Petey wants so desperately to know and relate to his estranged father. He knows less than nothing about the man, as Hal can't find a reasonable way to explain to him that his entire life has been spent living in fear of a monkey. Petey didn't even know that Hal had a brother. He outright lies to him, trying to make him believe that he was an only child. But back at Aunt Ida's, Petey saw whole photographs of Hal and Bill in school, putting 2 and 2 together that they were in fact twin brothers. Petey feels that Hal avoids him at all costs and doesn't want him to be part of his life, though deep down he truly enjoys the time he does spend with his dad, a lot more than he appreciates being raised by a so-called child expert. Hal wants to break down these walls, but he just doesn't know how. He receives another call from Bill, who this time breaks it all down for his twin brother. He wants Hal to bring Petey to him so that he can turn the key himself, effectively welcoming welcoming the curse into his life. Hal refuses this, but their call is cut short when Ricky bangs on their hotel room door, attempting to announce himself as the police. Hal instinctively opens the door, and the father-son duo are taken at gunpoint to their car, where Ricky demands them drive him to Bill's. Rick's plan here is to get Petey to break into Bill's through a dog door and steal the monkey back for him. Hal protests this, telling Petey and Ricky that this isn't what they want. He protests Petey going inside, but the gunman lets him know that they have no other choice. The whole place is trapped up like a fortress, and only the child will be able to sneak in. Hal lets him go, but makes one thing clear: do not turn the key. As Petey makes his way up the steps, we see a bunch of Home Alone style traps that Bill has sloppily rigged up to keep himself safe. Funny enough though, Petey has no issues at all making his way to the top level, where Bill has his little monkey shrine all set up. Surprised but happy to see Petey, Bill explains to him that the toy monkey isn't anything more than just a toy, but it is one that is very important to their family. It belonged to his grandfather, Captain Petey, before him, letting us know that Petey had been named after the boy's long-lost father. He tells the child to turn the key himself, and as if under some kind of hypnosis, he does. The toy spins its little drumsticks and pauses for but a moment before playing its signature tune. Outside in the car, Hal is still held at gunpoint, unaware of what's going on inside. He does his best to try and reason with Ricky, but while the booger picker fools around with the gun, it accidentally fires, sending a bullet through the windshield and into a wasp's nest. The wasps here all cartoonishly stance up on him and then fly like a freaking laser beam through the windshield and directly into his mouth, completely ignoring Hal and using Ricky's body as their new hive. Man, this Joey Ramone look-alike here absolutely kills me. I thought that he was so funny in this movie. The whole time I was watching it and I'm watching his character, I'm thinking like, I know that I recognize this guy from somewhere. And lo and behold, he was Corey from Halloween Ends. God, that atrocious Halloween movie. It's really fun to see the guy that beat up Michael Myers in a 1v1, portraying such an idiot loser here, man. Hal gets the idea and ditches the car, running up the stairs and into the house. Bill has a complete meltdown and declares that he knew it was Hal who had killed their mother, and that he knows it was an accident because he meant to kill him instead. He screams that he hates his brother, and that every time he turned the key, it was in hopes that it would choose to take Hal. The monkey gives no guarantees though, and after Bill tries again to force its hand, the monkey flips out. It begins banging on its drum, but this time, instead of its signature tune, the monkey begins playing a fast-tempoed drum roll that steadily increases to an alarming rate before it finally stops. At this moment, various explosions can be heard in the distance, and two skydivers smash through the roof into the home. Outside, we can see that the entire city is in shambles, with explosions going off everywhere and whole planes crashing into homes. Hal explains to Bill that the monkey is the one that is at fault for all of this, not them. They were just dumb kids who were naively passed a generational curse from their father. It's just like their mother had told them when they were young. Everyone dies, and they can't hold it against themselves forever. The two make up, and in an instant, the monkey hits its drum one single time, causing Bill's Home Alone defenses to spark and a bowling ball to be shot out of a cannon into his face, splattering his head against the wall in an insane effect. Hal and Petey drive away from the scene, watching as absolute chaos has enveloped their densely populated town. They witness people of all ages going out in all kinds of various creative ways. We even see the ghostly image of Death himself pull up on his pale horse and give them a little nod, letting them know that they're straight before riding off into the distance. Petey asks what they should do with the monkey, to which Hal decides the best course of action is for them to just hold on to it themselves, keep it in a safe place and understanding the power that it holds, not with the intention of harnessing that power, but by refusing to use it out of respect for what could happen. The film ends as a school bus full of cheerleaders pulls up to play us out, and a passing semi-truck swiftly decapitates every last one of them. And that's all that we got today for The Monkey. How did you enjoy the film? I really liked it. I thought that they did a really good job balancing all the things that they were trying to do here. The comedy hit for me, the kills were outrageous and insane, and the story that they told, it really sit with me. I thought that it was a good one. There are so many themes explored here about like passing traumas and other defects onto your children, as well as wrestling with just the thought of death itself, death of yourself or death of a loved one. It's all a lot, and it's some pretty heavy subjects to follow, so it's good that they brought in that black comedy to kind of make this uplifting in some capacity. I mean, between the dark subject matter and the insanity of these kills, this thing could have been a very different movie if they didn't throw a few jokes in there. The casting of this movie I thought was great. The lead actor here, Theo, he absolutely kills it. He plays dual roles here, and the two are very different from each other. I thought that he did a great job with that. Our main protagonist, Hal, is a very put together person person, despite all of these things that he's been through throughout his life. And Bill is the yin to that yang. He is off the rails, man, clearly. But I also really liked the supporting cast in this. I mean, the Joey Ramone stand-in absolutely killed me, obviously. Elijah Wood playing the kid's stepdad was great. He played that role so goofy, it was so funny. And I thought that the son, Petey, really did a good job of making a ridiculous circumstance feel like it had some ground to it. I mean, he only got to see his dad like once a year, and that could be a really hard thing to navigate on the acting world. But I thought that he played it well. Like, he seemed like he was open to his father, but that he was still heavily affected by the things that he had put him through, I guess. The monkey itself and the whole cursed object thing about it, I really like as well. We don't see movies like that too much anymore. We get slashers, we get paranormal, we get supernatural, you know what I mean? But we don't get a lot of cursed object movies like we used to. One interesting thing that I'd like to note that does kind of tie back to Stephen King's original is the interesting choice that they made for the song that the monkey would play. When you wind him up and he starts tapping away on his little drum, the song that he plays is called I Do Like to Be Down by the Sea. It's a catchy little bit that definitely has a circusy kind of vibe to it, but I do feel like it's a callback to Stephen King's original story, where at the end of that one, it definitely differs from this movie because Hal and Petey end up sailing out into the middle of a lake and dropping the monkey into it, causing all the fish in the whole area to constantly die. The monkey really hit for me, and if you haven't seen this, I definitely recommend you going out and checking it out. But if you have seen it, let me know what you thought about it in the comments down below. How do you feel about Osgood Perkins' track record between this and Longlegs? I feel like he's definitely coming into his own in the horror world. Like, I'm excited to see what he comes out with next. How do you guys think that the monkey got wound up to kill Aunt Ida? She couldn't have done it herself. I mean, that was explained in the thing. And Bill didn't have the monkey at that point, so what do we think happened there? The only thing that I can think of is that it must have been the realtor. They do mention that she was already planning on cleaning out her house around the time that this happened, so maybe somebody who was helping clean out the house found it and cranked the monkey up. I don't know. Maybe there's a deleted scene somewhere about that. But as always, I've been Sarah. If you did enjoy my video today, be sure to send it to someone else you think might enjoy it too. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more content just like this. I'm still fresh over here on YouTube, and I could use all the help I can get, so thank you in advance. And whether your day's been going good or bad today, I hope it gets better.